Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back. Apologies, we are late, but like I told you yesterday, there was a probability that this would not get done, and or that it would not get done on time because I had a morning errand to run. But anyways, I think it's good to know that we are back, and let's hope for the best. Let's hope for the best. We'll be going over what to expect or what's to come this weekend, in as far as the Premier League is concerned, and things in that line, plus much more. Plus much more. Apologies, was having our audios tested just to make sure everything checks out perfectly well for purposes of this broadcast. Oh, Jesus Christ. I hope the positioning is right. It feels like it's not well balanced. Is it? It feels a bit odd for me. I'm trying to figure out whether we're in the perfect setting, but I think we'll roll with with it the way it is. Even though we seem to be happy, we seem to be defying the rule of thirds, really, in that respect. But thank you so much for those of you that were part of last night's broadcast, as we discussed once again the extended preview over the Premier League. That's for match day 16. We looked at games like that of Manchester City. We looked at teams like Newcastle up against Sunderland, and all the other games that will be coming your way on Sunday, because overnight, major specific, a sort of concentration was on those games that will be coming your way on Sunday. And that's what we looked at predominantly. You woke up late? No. I woke up on time but like I had warned yesterday, I had some morning errands to run, which would have caused me to be here late. So that's why we are 1 hour and 25 minutes late for today's broadcast, because we usually do this at 11 a.m. on Saturdays. So please bear with me on that one. Then quickly, I prefer this time, says Pedri. Okay, but even 11 is not bad. Even 11 is not bad, because 11 a.m. that is usually around 8 a.m. Oh, every day? No. Unfortunately, 11. Sorry, this, because it's already midday for us, so that's usually not an ideal time, not just for me, but for majority of our audience, really. Because like I told you guys, I try to strike a balance between our colleagues that, especially on the European continent, for whom we are now 3 hours ahead of, and then also the Ugandan audience, for whom they have other work to get to. But again, we'll try to do our best to make sure everybody gets out in that respect. Otherwise, I hope you're all good. We also looked at what's to come elsewhere, in as far as Europe is concerned. We looked at what's to come on the Super Sunday, on Saturday, and things like that. We know Barcelona are going to be in action. Real Madrid will be in action. There are threats hanging over Xabi Alonso's job, that if they do not beat up against Deportivo Alves, he will be as good as done. We've also received reports that the Real Madrid board themselves have sent warnings to the Real Madrid players to say that this is not just only about the manager, that even some of you as individuals will be held culpable for your underperformances, and we cannot carry this on. I've already said this, and I'll say it again, that managers are not always sacked because they are bad. Oftentimes they are sacked because it's the easier decision to take, or it's the less costly decision to make, because the alternative is almost overhauling your entire squad to push out players that you think are not working, or that you think are not conforming to the culture and values that the manager is setting them. But because usually the manager comes with maybe a team of two, three people, or even four. Those ones are easier to get rid of, as opposed to getting rid of the entire squad of players, because the cost implications that are in are very, very high. And then also, teams do not have the luxury to overhaul a squad when and whenever they may deem it necessary, because then the transfer window is open at specific times, and if you cannot go in the transfer window and just buy anyone at any one point, that makes it difficult for you as a team. So with all the other factors are considered, it boils down to the manager being the one having to be sacrificed at the expense of the players. You say in the European continent, you're making us come at 6:30 a.m. I mean, that's for our 9 a.m. Broadcasts on weekdays, Monday to Friday. And like I said, if you've noticed, I try to come at least at 9:30 or 9:40 sometimes to try and accommodate that, you know. But when the time goes back to what we're accustomed to, it will be okay, because then it will be like 8 a.m. for you, possibly. No, it will be like 7:30 a.m. for you guys when things go back. Then your prediction is Barcelona 4, Osasuna 1. I don't know, is it just this season or this period? But if there's anything that you can almost guarantee on going into a game that involves Barcelona, is that they will concede a goal. They've looked very, very vulnerable defensively, and on the offense, they rely on their strength going forward, and their ability to score many, many goals. Sometimes they've not scored as many as we would have hoped that they would. For example, midweek in the UEFA Champions League against Eintracht Frankfurt, that one they could only score two, thanks to Jules Koundé, with Marcus Rashford and Lamine Yamal providing in the crosses that he put his head to win it for Barcelona. So I do not think it went according to plan, or it went the way Hansi Flick and the other Barcelona minders would have hoped. But like I keep saying, a win is a win at the end of the day. So anyways, so Barcelona will be in action today at 8:30 p.m. Really, Getafe will come at 11 p.m. against Espanyol. Atletico de Madrid opened the Saturday with a game against against Valencia at the Wanda Metropolitano. I agree, we are used to conceding at least a goal, if not two. Exactly. I think even when they come against the weakest of opponents, you sort of think to your mind or to yourself that somehow, even that opponent that you may think is that weak, they will still find a way to score against Barcelona, and it boils down to that in some respect or form. Pedro says it's all because of the stupidity. He says it's all because of the stupid offside trap tactic. By the way, De Jong is very annoyed by this, and that's why he has a small fallout with Flick. Again, I do not think he will be the first player to have a fallout with the manager, or small or big, when it comes to tactics. We've seen part of Man United's problems, for example, is because he wants his centre backs to venture high up the pitch. In other words, help in the tracking, especially when it comes to winning the ball back. That means that in that back three, at any one point, you expect at least one defender to push high up into midfield to form what would be like a midfield of three players, in that sort of sense. And then in some cases, it should be two defenders, depending on the phase of play and where the ball is at a given point of time and how the opponent is behaving, because you cannot push two up front if, let's say, you have a number 10 and a number 9 of the opponent are filling that space around the center arc. But I think we saw Luke Shaw do that a couple of times, tracking. So when one of the defenders tracks, that's how the 3-4-2-1 kind of system usually effectively works. So uh, at the very start of that project, players like Harry Maguire had concerns going that deep, and not just Harry Maguire, but players were hesitant to execute that because they're not accustomed to that. They're not accustomed to venturing further forward in the name of trying to help with the press and things like that. So I think we ought to put that into context. So similarly with Barcelona, I've seen, again, you saw Chelsea try to beat that offside trap on numerous occasions, and they did beat it, by the way. But also scored, I think, a couple of goals that were ruled out because of offside, because of that high, offside trap that Barcelona, tend to set for their opponents. Pedri says, but it's resolved. It's nothing like Salah and Slot. By the way, Salah is going to start today versus Brighton. I do not know if he will start, but what was communicated is that he will be in the matchday squad to face Brighton and Hove Albion, which is going to be his final game in Liverpool colours before he flies off or away for the Africa Cup of Nations that does kick off on the 21st of December with Morocco hosting the edition. And remember, Morocco will be one of the three countries that will host the 2030 FIFA World Cup, with Spain and Portugal being the other two countries. So, yeah, trust me, he will start 1000%. They had a talk yesterday. I promise you he will start. Yes, as regards to the talk, like I told those that were part of the detailed broadcast from last night, as we previewed those other games, was that Arne Slot, during his pre-match press conference yesterday, he did communicate that he was bound to have a meeting in the morning with Mo Salah, and his involvement or lack of would depend on how that meeting goes down. I do not want to speculate so much, but reading into the way he went about those questions in yesterday's pre-match press conference about Mohamed Salah, it sort of did feel like he had heeded to Clarence Seedorf's advice. For those of you that care to remember, Arne Slot was interviewed, I think, was it by TNT Sport or what? I don't remember specifically the media entity for which Seedorf was representing. In the aftermath of Liverpool's 1-0 victory against Inter Milan in the UEFA Champions League, that was on, was it on Tuesday night? Yes, on Tuesday night, when they were having an interaction about Mohamed Salah and the situation, Clarence Seedorf alluded to something. He said something like, we all make mistakes and we ought to find a way how to go past those mistakes. We all have emotions. And then Arne Slot's response was that, then if you say we all make mistakes, then that means it depends on the player whether they acknowledge that mistake. And then Clarence Seedorf alluded to the fact that Arne Slot is the manager and he should be the one reaching out to the player, extending that olive branch to say, look here, what you did here was not right, or I do not agree with it. Here's how I see things, but here's how we move forward. If you are willing to move forward, here's why you've not been playing, and our relationship is this way because of A, B, C, D. So, and seek that sort of resolution to the situation. So, when he commented about this yesterday, he said, so whatever would happen subsequently would depend on how the meeting would have gone. And from the revelations that we got thereafter, I would want to think that the meeting was really, really fruitful. And that's why Pedri and perhaps all football fans that care to know how this situation with Mo Salah is going will be happy to know that the player will be part of the matchday squad. I think, allow me make reference to, I think, a tweet made by Fabrizio Romano in respect to the Mo Salah situation, particularly, if I can find that. Oh, okay. Let me see. I'm trying to see. Yes, he did put out yesterday that Mo Salah recalled to the Liverpool squad for the game against Brighton at Anfield. That was earlier on. And then later on, he came out to say, he was quoting the words of Anna Slot about the situation. He said, Anna Slot said, I'm definitely not enjoying this Mo Salah situation. We have won the league together, and he has done so much for the club. Ideally, you are not in a situation like this with your player. He went on to say, okay, that's more or less the same quote. He said, I'm far from enjoying this Mo Salah situation, but I have to make my lineups doing what is best for the club and for the team, in my opinion. So that was Anas sort of defending his position as to why Mo Salah had started the previous 3 consecutive games on the bench, which caused Mo Salah to sort of, raise his concerns. Pedri, you say Jamie Carragher is stupid. Very, very unkind words, or it looks like you're not missing your words this morning. You say, I completely hate him now. Even Salah's daughter is better than him. His entire career is a failure. Now, what Pedri is making reference to is in the wake of the 7-minute interview that Mo Salah has done. Subsequent to that, which did happen over the weekend, when Jamie Carragher appeared on TV with Sky Sport, that was for Monday Night Football when Manchester United were winning against Wolverhampton Wanderers. He went on a scathing attack on Mo Salah. And by the way, for the part of Mo Salah, is that he had preempted whatever Yemi Carragher was bound to say, because Yemi Carragher went on an 8-minute monologue of some sort, saying how Mo Salah was a nobody, who before joining Liverpool, that he was looked at as the failure that he had been at Chelsea, that he was looked at as a player who failed at Chelsea, and he only became what he is when he came to Liverpool. And I said, while I do credit Liverpool for everything Mo Salah has become over the last 8 years, coming on to 9 years, let's not forget that Mo Salah had redeemed his reputation while playing for AC Roma. Initially, he went there on loan at the time when they were under the charges of Rudi Garcia, who is, I think, in charge of the Belgium national team currently. So when he goes there with Rudi Garcia, he did well, I think, scoring 14 goals in about 34 games, and then he scored, in about 35 games, and then he scored 15 goals the subsequent season after he had been signed to them permanently, about 15 goals in about 34 appearances. So he was on an upward trajectory to improve himself. Having come from FC Barcelona, of course, you did not think that he was going to start in that Chelsea side that was really, really strong. And I also mentioned at the time that Jose Mourinho, who was in charge of Chelsea at the time, he was never in the business of signing players just for the sake of signing good players that would improve his team. He was also in the business of signing good players to prevent them from joining some of his rivals. You remember when they signed William Borges da Silva, he said he would rather have him than Tottenham having him. So that kind of mentality is partly why Salah had joined Chelsea, not because he was going to be the star of the team. I also made the example of how the same Chelsea side had signed Kevin De Bruyne, a very young from the Belgian side, and then he came in and things did not work out, and he was sent out on loan to VfB Wolfsburg, who, after being impressed by his loan spell, decided to sign him permanently. And after which, he impressed with VfB Wolfsburg, I think helping them win the German Cup, and I think being player of the season. He signed on to Manchester City, and we all know the decade he spent there, how good he was eventually as a player. So, and then if you compare Mo Salah at Chelsea and Mo Salah at Liverpool, I'd say it's almost incomparable. You cannot compare the two, because we're talking about a Salah who has been the talisman at Liverpool for the last 8 consecutive years. Really, you compare him to a Salah at Chelsea, who was nothing more than a substitute player. In fact, he only scored 2 goals for them. One of those goals coming against Arsenal, that 6-0 thumping that Chelsea handed over to Arsenal in a game in which in the game in which Kieran Gibbs was given a red card for a foul that had been committed by Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. So really, you ought to remember all that and put it into context. Excuse me. But yeah, to put it straight, Jamie Carragher, I think he was eventually apologetic with his words. He just said a little too much. The following day, when he was featuring for, I think, CBS Sport, that was on Wednesday, in the aftermath of Manchester City's 2-1 victory against Real Madrid. But Erling Haaland joked that when I see Jamie Carragher in studio, I'm scared. He's a bit of a loose cannon now. It was all banter. But in that banter were words to say to Jamie Carragher that I think he went a little too far when it came to Mo Salah's situation. And it's basically that. And then he went on to write a column, which I did not read in its entirety, beyond the caption, to the link that he shared on social media, saying how Liverpool fans had chosen a manager who was only 18 months into his career at Liverpool over a player who had been a loyal servant over the last 8 years. I mean, whatever his arguments were, I necessarily do not believe that Liverpool fans have chosen Arne Slot over Mo Salah. I think it is a subjective opinion. I think it's a situation that has divided opinion. Let's not forget, for one simple fact, that a fortnight earlier than that, Jamie Carragher was the one demanding that Arne Slot be sacked. Really, he himself acknowledging that Liverpool are not known to be a sacking club, and all those things in that situation. He even said that Haaland was taken off because he was scared of Rudiger. Again, that couldn't be more force. I mean, not the case. Maybe Rudiger was scared of Salah. Sorry, maybe Rudiger was scared of Haaland. Pedri says versus Real Madrid. Yes, true. Salah over Slot any day. You can never go against your legend. I mean, I think I would have similar sentiments. Even though one player should not decide the fate of a manager at the club, if you had to choose based on pedigree or based on their individual contributions towards the club, you would say Salah by far preponderates whatever else Arne Slot will have to offer to Liverpool, or what he has had to offer to Liverpool, really, in that sort of sense. But anyways, we'll leave that at that situation at that, and move on to what else there is for us to expect. Jesus Christ. Anyways, it is what it is. It is what it is. So, quickly, just a recap for purposes of clarity on what's to come this weekend. Like I said, there's no early kickoff. What you do have is two games that kick off at 6 p.m. Between Chelsea and Everton. Our prediction for that game particularly was a 1-1 draw. Released, we went for a 2-1 victory in the game between Liverpool and Brighton. I did not rule out a 2-2 draw between these two sides in Liverpool and Brighton, but I think it's really, really possible that Liverpool get the better of Brighton and Hove Albion. From the three benchings of Salah in a row, it's clear that he is blaming it on Salah. Meanwhile, everyone in the team was very bad. Besides Szoboszlai, Salah still has experience and talent to help Liverpool. That's true. And those are some of the questions that Rio Ferdinand raised in his submission to say, look, any good player worth his salt or the quality of Mo Salah is not going to be pleased sitting on the bench. And his argument still was as ours had been, that no player is above being benched. Any player can be put on the bench. but for how long and to what extent? It's okay to start him on the bench and bring him on to see if he can try and affect the game, but dropping him at the earliest of him having a slump in his form is sort of a raise, is a sort of a show of the middle finger to the player, given all what is done for Liverpool. I mean, at the end of the day, it has to count for something, really. You say Liverpool 2-1, that's your prediction. How about for Chelsea? What's your prediction? Imagine Messi on the bench in 2020, ban loss because he did nothing after the match. When I was explaining that Mo Salah situation and him being benched, when I was making the argument that it's okay for any player to be benched and that Mo Salah is not above that, but not failing to bring him on is what then causes the issue. I remember making reference to Gerardo Tata Martino, who during his spell at Barcelona started benching some of the senior players, Iniesta, Xavi, and Messi. And to give it context, my argument was that the difference was that Gerardo Martino was trying to show Barcelona that it has come a time for us to start thinking about moving away from the core of this squad that has been so successful. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter how good a team you have, at some point, it's going to have to transition into a different team, into a new team. Over the last, I think, 6 or 7 consecutive years, Manchester City has been one of the elite teams of Europe. But present day, starting back to last season, they are going through a period of transition. Same applies for Liverpool. After reaching their climax, I think in 2022, that's for the 2021-2022, no, sorry. Yes, for the 2021-2022 Premier League season, they started a period of transition. And that came with the exit of players like Fabinho, Gini Wijnaldum, eventually Henderson, coming in of McAllister, Soboslai, Wataru Endo, the coming in of Cody Gakpo, the coming in of players like Luis Diaz. That was a transition in itself. That was a transition happening before our eyes. Liverpool signing George Mamadashvili is a transition period in itself because they envision that sooner or later, Alison Ramsey-Becker is going to be out of the frame, So that in itself is a transition. So you look at it in that context, and it's not really that different from what's happened to or what Gerardo Martino was trying to do, So at some point, that's bound to happen. It's bound to happen, But retreating back to the games that we do have. Excuse me. The reason as why my prediction for that Chelsea game against Everton, who I zeroed down to a 1-1 draw, is because of some of the things that Chelsea have done in recent times, particularly in the Premier League, but also away from the Premier League. Their last fixture was a 2-1 loss to Atlanta. It's not one that I had seen coming, given the quality that Chelsea have. Nonetheless, in football, anything is possible. Then also, I look to what had happened against Chelsea, against Bournemouth, that goalless draw. And then you come to think of what happened to them at Leeds United, and really leaves you not much encouragement in how you expect Chelsea to fare, because we're talking about a Chelsea side that went from beating up and thumping Barcelona, forcing Arsenal into a 1-1 draw, and then losing to Leeds by 3-1. So that in itself was a worrying sign. So I settled for a 1-1 draw. Pedri says Chelsea will win the game by 2-0. Trevor Chalobah to score. Do you think Julian Timber will play? I mean, I cannot guarantee it because according to Mikel Arteta, Julian Timber is one of the players that for whom he said that it would depend on how he felt. And that was yesterday. because we know that he had picked up a knock in that loss against Aston Villa. And I think his exclusion from the midweek engagements against Club Brugge for Arsenal was sort of a mitigating, was a sort of a way to, one, to have him recover, two, a way of giving him a much needed break, because we all remember that in that 2-0 victory for Arsenal against Brentford is when they had sought to first give him his ample rest, and he had to eventually come on before even the end of the first half when Christian Mosquera has suffered that injury. Had Christian Mosquera not suffered that ankle injury, perhaps we would have not seen him in that game. So that's to answer your question. So I cannot guarantee that he will play. However, there is still a chance that he could play, because knocks do vary. Some knocks heal faster than others. Others take just slightly longer, and it is what it is. There's no way around it. There's no two ways around it. You say there's a Baka cast. Whoever wins against them, they will start losing or drawing. Example, Chelsea, Real Madrid, when they win the Clásico. Sevilla, they are winless in 8 games after beating us 4-1. That's an interesting analogy to go about it, really, when you bring those facts to light. Maybe indeed there is some misfortune in a team beating up against Barcelona, because Real Madrid, after beating up against Barcelona, went on a run of 3 consecutive draws, in between, after which they beat up against Bilbao, then went and lost to Osasuna, and then in the UEFA Champions League beat up against Olympiacos, but also lost to Manchester City. So it's been only 2 victories, I think, in about their last 8 matches. So it's equally not been good for Barcelona. Even PSG for a small while. PSG, I could not envision that goalless draw against Athletic Bilbao in the midweek, But yeah, equally PSG have not in the best of forms. So, okay. Though I'm tired, maybe not tired, but hungry. I need to eat something, really. Feel hungry. Anyways, okay. For Liverpool, Brighton, I did love their performance against Manchester City. Sorry, I did love their performance against Inter Milan. Do you want $1,000? How do I get the $1,000? That would go a great deal in helping this channel. But unless you're rich or wealthy, who wouldn't want $1,000? $1,000 is about anywhere between 3.4 to 3.5 million shillings, Uganda shillings. Pedri says, just say I support Barcelona. Let me ask Pedri, have you ever held $1,000? Not somebody's money, your money, $1,000. That's a question for you. So, anyways, so Liverpool, Brighton, like I said, Liverpool, it's a fixture that Liverpool have won twice in the last 5. They've lost twice and drawn once, including a 3-2 defeat to Liverpool. Sorry, a 3-2 victory against Liverpool at the Amex Stadium, but they just do not often win well at Anfield. They just often do not get away with it at Anfield. That's for Brighton. Pedri says yes. Oh wow, that's impressive. So, but like I told you, $1,000 in my country, that translates to about anywhere between 3.4 to 3.55 million shillings. That would go a long way in helping this channel. Anyways, so I'm looking at their performance against Inter Milan, for which I was really, really impressed. Looking at their record against Brighton, specifically at Anfield, That's where I sort of helped formulate my decision that Liverpool could get the better of Brighton and win the game by 2-1. And in any case, if Mo Salah were to feature in that game, I think he would want to have sort of a good performance that bids farewell to the Liverpool fans temporarily as he goes off for the Africa Cup of Nations, really. So that's it. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Do you need food? Let's make it $5,000. Well, I think if I were to receive $5,000 in my account, my bank would call me to say, we are experiencing some suspicious activity on your account. It has never had $5,000. I think the most it had, and it was some project money that was for there's a project that we're handling with a colleague of mine, and he needed to transfer, and he transferred money in that account that was close to, I think, close on $4,000 something, thereabouts. But anyways, all the jokes and banter aside, it's, those were our predictions. Then for Burnley against Fulham, I went for a 1-0 victory for Burnley against Fulham, predominantly because, surprisingly, it's that kind of fixture that Burnley have dominated. They just know how to beat up against Fulham. And like I was saying yesterday, really any result can happen. The one thing you do find in football is that some teams tend to struggle against certain opponents, regardless of whatever form or shape they come in. So, for example, Pedri, which team do you know that normally struggles against Barcelona? Sorry, which team do you know that Barcelona always struggle against, regardless of how they meet, when they meet, where they meet? Which team is that? So, in this particular case, that's the situation for Fulham. When you go back in seasons gone by, including the 2023-2024 Premier League campaign, when Burnley had last been in the Premier League under the charges of Vincent Kompany, it ended in a 2-2 draw at home against Burnley, and Burnley beat up against Fulham by 2-0 away from home. And they have beaten up against Fulham away from home on the last 2 occasions. Really, they've won 1 fixture at home, drawn 2. Now, Pedri says Burnley will lose by 2-0 against Fulham. Fulham have had some very, very decent performances, even though some have not yielded them the results that they would have loved, including that 5-4 loss to Manchester City. Really, their last outing, they equally lost to Crystal Palace by 2-1. They've been that kind of team, far from convincing this season. Really, they've not done that bad, but, they can do better. So Pedri says Harry Wilson will score a brace. I mean, he's been in decent form in recent times. How about Samuel Chukwueze, the Nigerian winger, who is on loan from AC Milan, formerly also at Villarreal? Pedri says Celta Vigo, that Barcelona always struggle against Celta Vigo, regardless of how they meet them, when they meet them, and everything in that line. He says always. Iago Aspas, this one did have a stint with Liverpool at some point. You say Rayo Vallecano as well. Celta beat Real Sociedad. Sorry, you say Celta beat Real Madrid by 2-0, as well as Rayo drew 0-0 with Real. We beat Celta Vigo 4-2 and drew 1-1 with Rayo. I mean, yeah, that's the nature of football. But sometimes there's that one small team who think, I can just never lose to this opponent. And then they bring their A game. And before you know it, you're in a run for your money. Then, the game between Arsenal and Wolverhampton Wanderers, my prediction was particularly a 3-0 victory for the Arsenal. Now, not much has changed, even though not much has changed in the wake of Arsenal's injuries because Kai Havertz is still out, Christian Mosquera is still out, Gabriel Magalhaes is still out, William Saliba is a major doubt for this game. Urian Timber did not train. Yes, they were waiting to see if he would train. Gabriel Jesus is just returned, but they have so many injuries, and not just squad injuries, but injuries that are to players that ordinarily will start a game for this Arsenal side. I mean, when you look at that list, I think of about 8 players who are a doubt for today's game, which kicks off, by the way, at 11 p.m. East African time. There's only 2 players that are not starters in that Arsenal team, and those players are Max Dorman and Christian Mosquera. But when you look at Kai Havertz, Gabriel Magalhaes, William Saliba, Leandro Trossard, Declan Rice, Urian Timber, I mean, those are starters. You say last year we winning 2-0 against Celta Vigo in the 86th minute, and then the game ended 2-2 in Celta Vigo Stadium. You see? So I think that says it all for the encounter between Barcelona and Celta Vigo. So, but even with all those injuries, really, there's a possibility that Urian Timber could be back for this one. And I think it will come a little too early for majority of those players. I am one advocating for Martin Zubimendi to be rested, but knowing Mikel Arteta, I think he will start. I have no qualms. Pierre Hincap starting with Christian Nogat as the centre-back pairing. Of course, they will be up against a different beast in Wolves with Jürgen Strand Larsson. But we're talking about the worst team in the Premier League. Only 2 draws from the opening 15 fixtures, losing 13 games without a win. Now, whereas that is the situation, they are always eager to upset their next opponent at the earliest opportunity. And like I said, in football, anything can happen. But I would fancy Arsenal, even with their reserve starting 11, to win this game by 3-0. That's my prediction for that one. You know, really, Pedri is saying they will win by 2-0. So really, guys. So yeah, that's my prediction. Did you know that Nogadi's name is like Norga in Danish? Really? I mean, I understand that oftentimes we will mispronounce names because we read them with the context of our own languages or the way we've learned English. And then yet the pronunciation or the enunciation of majority of those names is usually not what we think it is, you know? There's that sort of a fact. It's just a truth. So I do respect when you say that that's how his name should be pronounced, or that's how it's written in his native language. Anyways, guys, it's been 43 minutes. Allow me not to drag this any further than what we've discussed. We will continue with the debate and discussion. But I need to go and grab something to eat. Otherwise, I feel really, really hungry. You say Hinkapi is Hinkapie. I totally understand. I remember particularly going back to the 2014 World Cup when James Rodriguez was being pronounced as James Rodriguez. And we were all wondering, where's the H in that name for him to be called James as opposed to James Rodriguez, you know? So then, for example, I think the goal scorer for, was it Napoli? No, not Napoli. The goal scorer for Nottingham Forest, Igor Jesus. It's Higo Jesus. And I'm like, Jesus? Where's the HE? but it is what it is. So, anyways, Pedri, thank you so much for being for having been part of this fruitful discussion at this Saturday afternoon. Allow me wish you a wonderful rest of the day. You say KHA Camis, James in Spanish, you know, still James in English. Anyways, guys, it's been a pleasure doing this with you for the brief review that we've had and for the fruitful discussion. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, everybody that liked the broadcast, and every single one of you that was part of it that did not like, but at least spared the moment to be with us. It's been a pleasure. Have yourself a blessed weekend and enjoy your game. Oh, Barcelona, Osasuna, you want me to predict the game? I think Barcelona will win by 3-1. That would be my prediction for that game. For Real Madrid against Deportivo Alves, we do not know. Those players had better fight more than they fought against Manchester City, even when I thought they really, really fought for the manager or to salvage his job if it was ever on the line. So let's wait and see. For you, you went with the 4-1 prediction for Barcelona. Me, I'm going with 3-1. You said Pedri 4 goals. No, Pedri may not even score. But I reckon either of Lamine Yamal or Marcus Rashford, provided any of them starts, could be on the score sheet. Have yourself a blessed weekend. Bye-bye for now.